Hi, it's Arjun. We are still in Houston for what is our third consecutive CERAWeek conference. We're recording this just after day 3. There are 2 more days to go. I'm actually only here for 1 more day. If there's a theme for this year, uttered by just about every speaker or executive or attendee, it has been pragmatism, balance, and realism. Absolutely the themes of this conference. A sharp evolution from the prior couple of years and the years before. It's been uttered almost to the point of absurdity, to be completely frank. With that said, we've long been in this camp of pragmatism. For those new to it, welcome. All are welcomed. And we are, of course, still embracing inclusivity here at Super-Spiked. Some will say that we shouldn't be so forgiving to those that 5 minutes ago were calling for an end to fossil fuel investments and so forth. And we just say, listen, the world's seen the light on the importance of reliability, affordability, and geopolitical security as the obvious order of our hierarchy of needs. We welcome the change in tone and rhetoric. And to all of you who are loyal subscribers and readers and viewers, you know where we've been, and it has been our mission that the dialogue, that the understanding, and the macro energy policies around energy reflect that natural hierarchy of needs that puts reliability, energy for all at its core. Without energy, as our Secretary of Energy highlighted, you have nothing. Energy is everything. It is at the core of all of our lives and all economic activity. And so in that spirit, we welcome everyone to the world of pragmatism. Now, before we get to we're going to do our top 10 takeaways from CERAWeek, we do want to offer our congratulations to Dan Yergin, Atul Arya, and everyone involved with the conference at S&P Global for putting on what can only be considered a world-class show. It is absolutely an awesome event, a must-attend event in the energy world. I've been able to catch up with many friends and former colleagues from around the world. There is frankly nothing like CERAWeek. I'm actually quite exhausted, and I'm looking forward to getting home in the next day or so. And with that, let's go to our takeaways. Our number one takeaway, we are absolutely excited that energy pragmatism, balance, and realism was the overwhelming theme of the week. It is where we've always been, and we welcome those who have come this way. We will say, though, before we hurt ourselves patting ourselves on the back about having this pragmatic worldview, and we're going to quote the great Dave Mustaine, so far so good, so what? Yes, especially if you're in the oil and gas space, it is nice to not have that vitriolic, your sector should die type rhetoric that was the theme of the prior 4 years. Definitely nice. But it doesn't change the fact that the current reality, the current economic outlook, the changing geopolitical order is still very uncertain. If you're a corporation, an executive, or an investor, what you care about is how do you ultimately maximize or optimize long-term stock price performance, and that is through growth and returns. And nicer words, nicer slogans, everyone up there talking about pragmatism and realism. It's nice, it's welcomed, it's a little bit of a relief. On the other hand, you can't eat nice slogans. It is still imperative on companies to figure out what are the strategies that are going to generate superior growth and returns to compete in what is a very super vol world on all things related to the sector, whether that's policy, whether that's tariffs, whether that's commodity prices, whether it's cost of capital. It is about navigating the uncertainty that exists out there. Takeaway number 3. What is kind of my biggest surprise, the area I feel most differently about, the biggest winner out there? I'm going to actually say it's the Middle East, broadly speaking, and specifically the opportunities that are existing in the United Arab Emirates and in Saudi Arabia. We had heard speeches from Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, the head of ADNOC, and one of my longtime and all-time favorite CEOs, Amin Nasser of Aramco. And when you think about how the Middle East is pursuing opportunities in this environment, they are taking advantage of massive resource opportunities that they have, but not just in oil, which is what we've always heard about, but across the energy value chain, including natural gas, including in nuclear, including in a range of new and alternative energies, and they're pressing their advantage. There is an excitement, there is a vibrancy, there is a commercial aggressiveness, dare I say, from these companies, which are also countries, to help meet the world's energy needs. It's what we should be doing in the US, and hopefully we will. under our new administration. It's what Canada should be doing. It's what Europe should be doing. And of course, in the Middle East, they're well positioned to meet the energy needs wherever they are. Historically, it would have been the US overwhelmingly, as well as Europe. The US is now increasingly less dependent on the Middle East for especially oil and even natural gas, of course. And then Europe's got a whole bunch of economic challenges. The Middle East is turning eastward towards Asia, towards those multi-billion person scale economies, and it's being led by ADNOC. It's being led by Aramco, and they're looking across value chains. The old way of thinking of the Middle East was that this is oil, this is OPEC. When people thought about OPEC, they thought about oil cartels, they thought about Arab oil embargoes for the 70s, they thought about a negative inverse correlation between what was going on in the Middle East. Maybe it was wars, maybe it was Arab oil embargoes, and the health of Western economies. That's the old world. That's not the new world. The new world is one of, by their standards, liberalizing, of commercializing, of going after opportunities. And I dare say, the Middle East, and especially UAE and Saudi, they look to me to be more relevant than Europe in the world ahead. Who is going to provide all this energy that the other 7 billion people on Earth need? It should be some from the United States. It should be some from Canada. It is for sure going to be from UAE and Saudi Arabia, and perhaps some of the other countries in that region. Based on everything I heard at this conference, I'm going to call the Middle East the biggest winner at this moment of this kind of changing world order that we're in. Let me turn to takeaway number 4, and it is the question I've been asking of, is Europe representative of deep value? Now, here at the start of 2025, the Euro Stocks Index has had a good start to the year, bouncing, perhaps dead cat bouncing is the question, ahead of the S&P 500. And Europe's been every investor, analyst, executive's whipping boy as having lost competitiveness, of having been in structural decline, and as having really fallen behind U.S. exceptionalism as the term is gone. And there is a recognition within Europe that competitiveness and improving competitiveness is going to be key. We heard that from a range of companies at this conference, and the prior week at Thrive at the Daniel Energy Partners Conference, and the recognition that energy is at the core of that competitiveness. But when you really dig in and you speak to some of these executives, the question has been raised. Yes, some of the rhetoric has changed about needing to be competitive, but are actions actually going to follow? And I've been really struck that when I've heard German executives and French and UK executives speak about Europe and then speak about America, they tell everybody, if you're an American company, an American investor, you don't realize how lucky you are. You may have your own issues that you think need fixing, permitting reform, legal, lobbying, all these kind of things. But compared to Europe, they take America in a heartbeat. And so the number one thing we'll be watching in Europe is, are they going to truly pursue energy strategies that at their core look for the most reliable, least expensive, most geopolitically secure energy source? And if they do, to what degree is that coming from within, especially Western Europe? It's way too early to know. These things can sometimes evolve over time. It's very easy to remember what has been a pretty challenging last decade, but we're going to keep an open mind. And I will perhaps differentiate Europe en masse, where I think there's some huge questions on, can they improve competitiveness? To the European big oil specifically, there's 4 of them. We're not going to get into individual names, and maybe 2 or 3 of them look better than one or some other ones. And we don't make stock calls at Super-Spiked. But there is a big value gap between the European big oils and some of the US larger companies. And these companies are relatively more immune from the challenges within Europe itself. They're, to varying degrees, players in global LNG. They are still been doing exploration. And to the extent shale, if it is going to mature someday, then perhaps some of these companies are actually well positioned to think about what comes next. So we keep an open mind about the European big oils as being a value opportunity versus US companies. But I think as far as Europe as a continent economically goes, we really want to see, are they going to pursue low-cost, reliable, geopolitically secure energy within Europe, and without that sort of net zero is all that matters type of mindset that they've had certainly since the Paris Agreement of 2015. Our 5th takeaway is around Canada. Can Canada become the United States of the next decade? And what we mean by that is drill, baby, drill, build, baby, build. in terms of both oil and LNG infrastructure and export capacity. We appreciate that there's currently a lot of uncertainty, that the Trump-inspired tariffs have not been welcomed by, as best as we can tell, all Canadians. Again, we are not geopolitical analysts. We're not a foreign affairs correspondents here at Super-Spiked. We are merely making energy points. And to the extent any of that rhetoric or actions can inspire Canada to come together, to turn back in a pro-growth, pro-business, pro-energy kind of environment, it would be welcomed. When you think about my earlier comment about what the Middle East is doing to really maximize and optimize all of its energy opportunities, not just in oil, but also in natural gas across the value chain, but also in nuclear, as the case may be, and in many new and alternative energies, and including, by the way, on the emissions side, all those kind of things absolutely can exist and apply in Canada. And we're going to ask the same question that we asked for Europe. I think it's less dramatic for Canada because I think they've been relatively more competitive, relatively versus Europe, more pro-business. But can they get back to where they are recognizing their economic importance to the world? Population-wise, Canada, of course, is a small country, but from a resource standpoint, it is massive. And I hope Canada will figure out how they can become great again in terms of their energy opportunities and join the LNG build-out wave to help meet the massive unmet energy needs of the rest of the world. I am personally more optimistic on Canada than Europe, but there's a lot of room for Canada to crank things up about 10 notches and to really lean into their areas of competitive advantage. So let me turn to the United States and our takeaway number 6. I think there's no question that post-World War II world order, as well as the end of the post-Bretton Woods era that started in 1973, both of these are going under meaningful changes. So geopolitically and economically and monetarily, we're in the midst of some major changes. I will say, I think, as usual, President Trump is a catalyst for change, but he's not the root cause. The issues that exist really since, say, our financial crisis of endless monetary policy to try and prop up an economy, significant fiscal expansion across administrations, across Republicans and Democrats, to the various degrees we need to adjust how we think militarily around the world. All these things are in the process of change, at least as it comes to the energy sector. Everything in the United States at this moment is super vol. It could be prices, it could be tariffs, it could be cost of capital. Everything right now there is an uncertainty. We have massive oil and gas resources. We have the world's leading capital markets. We have Silicon Valley and the world's leading technologists. And we have an entrepreneurial spirit that really doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. Despite all these challenges, the US is arguably the greatest place on earth to do business as a free person. But as far as the corporate sector goes, the uncertainty that we see, especially in the next couple of years as we go through some transformation and changes, in a super vol environment, usually companies will step back and stick to their knitting and go into a little bit of a shell. There are going to be opportunities to lean in. And you're going to have to make some big bets along the way in the face of great uncertainty. And can you skate to where the puck may be going? That's going to be the question for executives in a super vol world, which usually is a time where people retreat into their shell, into their comfort zones. It's going to be the big challenge of, I think, being a US company in the years ahead. The 7th topic area I want to talk about is power and infrastructure. The only theme that got as much attention as pragmatism, realism, and balance was AI, electrification, and the significant power needs that exist out there. And I think if you're a merchant power producer or a traditional utility, there's a lot of opportunities coming your way, and these are things you know how to navigate. I think the question is going to be, for those in perhaps the traditional oil and gas space or in other areas, how do you participate? Where in the value chain makes sense? Is it about monetizing perhaps your natural gas resources? Are you an equipment or service provider? We're seeing some mid-cap oil services companies lean into distributed generation. We're seeing some of the largest big oils, perhaps more so in Europe, trying to figure out their opportunities in power. It's going to be one of the big themes and questions, and it certainly came through. The related question that also arose is this idea of bill, baby, bill, and can we do it more cost effectively? And it was the CEO of Williams, Alan Armstrong, who I think had I'm going to say the quote of the conference for me. when he said that most people don't appreciate how challenging permitting it is. And when you look at just a normal pipeline, meaning there isn't some big controversial fight over it, that the cost of permitting, according to Mr. Armstrong, is double the cost of actually the pipe itself, which is a remarkable statistic. The moderator asked him to repeat the comment. The cost of the pipeline, the permitting cost, when there's not a big environmental fight or controversy, that permitting cost is double what the actual pipe cost is. That is remarkable. That needs to change. If we're going to look for anything in the coming year ahead, permitting reform is a cliche. It's really how can you speed up this permitting process? There's no way getting permits should cost double the cost of the actual pipeline itself. That's ridiculous. So takeaway number 8, it's the question of, in a world of pragmatism and realism and balance, what is the role for climate and the environment and the old slogan of net zero by 2050? That slogan, I don't think one company or executive that we heard uttered the word net zero by 2050 on any of the panels I attended. That slogan has died a quick death, and I will say good riddance. I think everyone at Super-Spiked, everyone that reads or watches Super-Spiked knows we never thought net zero by 2050 made any sense as a way to organize society. It's absurd. It's flipping the hierarchy of needs upside down. You don't start with trying to eliminate carbon emissions. You start and you end with providing energy for all. It's all anyone cares about at all times. There is zero evidence anything else is more important to everybody than having energy access at all times. It's more important than affordability and geopolitical security, but make no mistake, those two topics are number 2. And then ultimately, to what degree, how do we work in environmental and various climate considerations? And I do think we need to come back to it, not in this video, but in a future video dedicated to, I'm going to still use the word, that broad topic of sustainability along with the environment and so forth. How do we think about it going forward? It's not for this video. I will say that when I went over to the Agora side of the conference, which for those of you who don't know, that's where a lot of the new energies, alternative energy, and climate and emissions side of the conference is held, I will say that there was still a life to it. It had a lot of good energy, and some of the themes and some of the specific technologies have naturally evolved. I will say that this idea that should we stop caring about methane emissions as an example? No, we shouldn't. If we are going to produce a whole lot of natural gas in the United States and Canada in particular, it ought to be near zero methane. So as an example of, I think, an area that is still going to get deserved focus and attention. We also know that in a world where you have billion-person scale economies ramping up, there's going to be a whole bunch of new technologies that those countries are going to want to do in order to have reliable energy, in order to have affordable energy, where if they can control the technology and they don't have to import it from another country, maybe they have to initially buy it, maybe they have to initially build it, but on a go-forward basis, they're not continuously importing the feedstock. That is a very geopolitically secure position for billion-person scale economies that may not have either crude oil or natural gas or any other fuel source for that matter. So we remain big proponents that this isn't just about oil and gas. It's actually as much about the new stuff. What we don't know and what we've never known, and what was the big, frankly, falsehood, will be as polite as possible the last 4 years, is that we know how to scale everything up quickly by some arbitrarily short date to displace and to cause a reduction in oil and natural gas. That we do not have. That for sure we do not have. But I think this conference, I will say, there was still an energy and life to the Agora side of the business, and it's deserved. And I think we just need to keep things in the right perspective. We need to think about new technologies, and we'll look forward to breakthroughs as or when they happen. The 9th takeaway is, when we talk about all of the above, I do think we need to be clearer on what we mean. This is not code word for we only care about the new stuff. This actually, to me, means all technologies, whether it's oil, gas, coal, solar, wind, nuclear, geothermal, and anything I didn't just mention. So apologies if I didn't mention your technology. How does each one compete on cost of supply and reliability and geopolitical security? It's going to be a severe competition. And today we know, with some of the delays in gas turbines and the escalating cost of some of those natural gas power plants, in some places, solar plus batteries are going to actually make more sense. But we know that's not true everywhere. There's places that don't get as good sun, and where the 4-hour battery, if you stack them up a few times, is not good enough. So if you're going to have intermittent power like solar and wind, what is the cost and how are you firming it up? And there is no one size answer fits all. There's no, this is the winner. And even in the natural gas power generation value chain, in speaking with companies, there's a range of opportunities well short of that combined cycle gas turbine that might now take, I think, 3.5 or 4 years of lead time. There's many interim ways, perhaps lower cost is going to be innovation across these value chains. So when we talk about all the above, we are truly talking about all technologies, including new and alternative ones. And we ask in each region, in each country, and for each company, how do they compete on these critical metrics? The old way in the previous 4 years of saying, how do they compete on CO2? It never made sense. It never, ever in a gazillion years was going to make sense. Okay? All the above is not code word for only pretending the old world exists. It is about competition and how does your technology or cost of supply stack up within the context of your region. I think the final point that we want to make, and this is really targeted to the companies out there, is that, Facebook, I think, was the company that had the line of move fast and break things. Moving fast and breaking things, not exactly an oil industry kind of slogan or oil and gas or a traditional energy kind of slogan. I will say, though, I think there is a need to move deliberately, but decisively while breaking some things. When you think about Silicon Valley companies, you think about outsized returns potential, really unique technologies. You think about founder, investor, venture capital kind of mindsets. How can I get the biggest bang for my buck? And that is not the nature of all energy companies. Energy companies are not tech companies, but there are elements of that risk taking, of being more nimble, of, again, trying to skate, perhaps not exactly knowing where the puck is going to go, and leaning into some things and taking some chances, of being nimble ideologically about what makes sense and what doesn't make sense for your company. These are some of the risks that in a super vol world, and especially if you're an American company, and I'm going to say also if you're a Canadian company, and maybe if you're a European company, these are some of the things you're going to have to be thinking about. How and where do I want to lean in from a risk perspective, and what timing and with what technology or opportunity in the coming years. So I want to end this video on a personal note. And this is not a single person I caught up with. This is actually a handful of younger people I've spoken to. I just say over the last several weeks at various conferences that I've met, they've asked for mentoring or time to catch up. And there was a common theme amongst at least several of them. This is, again, folks maybe 5, 10, 15 years earlier side of their career, but not quite just out of college either. And the comments were all around, these were all folks who were probably a little more sustainability oriented, a little more maybe climate oriented, who all worked at traditional energy companies. And one comment struck me in particular. I really want to be part of the solution. So I thought I would start with part of the problem. By that, they meant working at a traditional energy company. And I just said, stop right there. If you are working for an energy company of any kind, whether that's oil, gas, coal, solar, wind, nuclear, geothermal, hydrogen for that matter, which I'm not a huge fan of, electric vehicles, range of possibilities there, whatever it is, whatever is providing energy, batteries, algae for that matter, whatever form of energy you're providing, you're doing a good thing for society. It is the most noble job you can have, being someone that works in an energy company and helping provide the energy that the rest of us all take for granted. There's a nice role for capital markets people. Companies do need money. So I think we play a role. Lawyers play a role. We need a legal system. But if you are working, these people are working at energy companies, working at traditional energy companies, and they should have great pride. They're doing a great thing. Everybody needs energy, not just the lucky 1 billion of us, but all 8, soon to be 9 billion people on Earth. So if you work at any type of energy company, I'm going to say in my book, you're doing a great thing for humanity. You are already part of the solution. Thank you.